General of the MK Council. Now, just so you are not confused, there is an organization calling itself Umkhonto weSizwe Military Veterans Association, and that's led by Kebi Maphatso. Then there is another organization that is also linked to the MK, but they call themselves the MK Council. And this one, I believe, and Mr. Ntatisi will correct me if I'm wrong, it's led by the former general himself. That is Mr. Ntatisi, you will let me know and correct me if I'm wrong, but your MK Council, it's led by Sphiwe Nyanda, am I wrong?
Correct. You're right, Kodi, and good day to your listeners.
Wonderful, and I thank you very much for making the time to speak to us. So let's get straight into it. Are you aware of any developments that may have occurred between now and perhaps the last hour as to the former president's attitude towards the Zondo Commission tomorrow?
Well, I don't think the product that must drive the president to adhere to the constitutional obligation as required would actually be a subject of the NEC or any other process. I think this is his call. We are subjected to a constitution of a country that requires that we must all rally around it and respect its terms and conditions. So, by and large, I think it is his call, and I really want to believe that by now the former president certainly might have made his mind to see the need to show up to the Zondo Commission as giving his side of the story as a witness.
Well, as I've been explaining the difference between yourselves as the MK Council versus the MKMVA, as led by Kebi Maphatso, they went to see him in Gandla, and he told them, this is their report back now, he told them that he will stick with his decision not to go there. Are you saying that he shouldn't listen to that advice, and that the MKMVA is actually wrong by continuing further to say they're going to protect him should he be arrested?
I think any advice to the contrary is misleading, and I would honestly advise the former president not to listen to anybody who would so provide such an advice. It's an ill advice. It's not in accordance with the standards that we have set in this country. It's un-ANC. It's actually it's disrespect of the South African population and its constitution. It's actually disrespecting the country if people would advise him that way. But like I said, it is his call. Honestly speaking, we have a country. We're running a country. We have got systems that are sound. We have got one of the best constitutions recognized globally that actually compete with the rest of the world in terms of its standard. I know, and I want to believe that those that would actually be members of the ANC, and particularly having played a leading role in terms of even determining this constitution, that embraces the elements of, the greater elements of the Freedom Charter, what we fought for, It is my advice to say it's really not it. Anybody must undermine the constitution of this country. I don't think any advice that would come that way to President Zuma, you should actually celebrate it. It's ill advice.
If you're just joining us, we're still in conversation with Gregory Ntatisi, the Acting Secretary General of the MK Council. Mr. Ntatisi, let's answer the question, therefore. What should happen first within the ANC if the former president does indeed follow through with his decision not to appear at the Zondo Commission? I was just in conversation with the secretary of the ANC in the Eastern Cape. They saying that they're sticking with their call that the former president must be disciplined within the ANC and perhaps his membership suspended.
Well, look, the ANC, NEC is an elected body that must exercise the powers of running the affairs of the organization in between conferences. So I would equally expect them to exercise their fiduciary duty by acting in accordance with what the Constitution demands out of them. We are all subjected to that authority until the next conference. And anybody who acts outside the parameters of the discipline of the ANC, action must be taken. But here we are talking about two things. What the NEC of the ANC through all the necessary processes will do differs diametrically with the legalities of what the country expects of all of us. Now, there are two things here. The first call is that we call upon the former president to adhere and respect the constitution of the country. The second call we are making is that the NEC of the ANC must act in accordance with what the conference has mandated them in terms of running the affairs of the ANC, including taking action on those that preempt or undermine the discipline of how we should conduct ourselves in public, within the structures of the ANC, and in accordance with the constitution of the ANC, and service our people and our country diligently and with discipline.
Well,
I expect them to.
Let me tell you what your comrades in the party in KZN have said. The secretary of the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal, Mdumiseni Ntuli, warning that the former President Jacob Zuma is not just an ordinary person from Nkandla. If he is arrested, should he not go to the commission tomorrow, it might risk splitting the ANC. Do you agree with those sentiments? Do you go along with those sentiments?
There are a number of observations that can be made here. Let's start by saying, if you follow the news, you would have heard that there are people who are now hidden, now open, intimidating and threatening the country of a civil war, civil unrest and a civil war, basing their take on the strength of supporting actions and behavior of individuals outside the parameters of the constitution of the country and the constitution of the ANC or the structures of the ANC. We are aware of such. And I think when the secretary of KZN was making that observation, it should not be taken light, because in any given transformation and a revolutionary process, you will find counter-revolutionaries, and they will actually act in such a way that they will undermine all the disciplinary processes and bring all tendencies foreign to undermine the unity of the country. So I wouldn't per se celebrate people who are threatening us, but I would also not want to take them light, because we're talking about elements of state capture, we're talking about corrupt practices, we're talking about people that we do not know their proper origin in terms of how did they become part of the mainstream. And I think such tendencies are beginning to rear their heads in terms of people coming out to show us who they are, and undermining the gains as we have made them to date. So their survival, part of their survival could be to render the country ungovernable. We are aware of such tendencies. We are not afraid of them, but we need to be aware, and our people need to be aware and be taken into confidence as to how they should be ready to protect themselves when such eventuality show rear its head.
Yeah, well, let me ask you this final question, and let's be clear to our viewers who exactly you are referring to when you say in a revolution you're going to encounter counter-revolutionaries. I want you to be clear that you are talking to those who fall on the other side of this organization calling itself the MK, because you are the MK Council and then there's the MK MVA. They are the people who've said that there is going to be chaos in the country. So that is who you are referring to. But I also want to couple this question with this, that why should South Africans trust anything that will come, or that anything will come of the NEC meeting that is taking place when you can have the Secretary General of the ANC saying, well, don't mind the constitution for the time being. This is Zuma we are talking about. And then you have the president who's going to say, well, allow for the former president to consult and, take advice from people. Shouldn't there have been firm language coming from the top leadership structures of the ANC?
Two questions. Let me deal with the first one. MK is one structure. Now, the two structures that are running the affairs of MK are as a result of the misunderstanding on how the interest of the membership of MK, the expertise of MK, and the discipline of MK must be nurtured. That is another topic for another day. Safe to say, members of MK know exactly how they should conduct themselves, how disciplined they should be, and how hard they should be working towards making sure that the ANC remains a united and organized organization and investing all the expertise that they have in terms of strengthening the structures of the ANC. Any other thing that they are doing outside that is un-ANC, is un-MK. The second question that has to do with the elevation of an individual above the structures of the ANC is what we cannot tolerate as the council. Giving people an opportunity to consult at the level of seeking a solution towards a problem they are sitting with is granted. But doing things that undermines established principles that must be adhered to by all citizens is another thing. And I do not think when the president of the country was alluding to the fact that people must be granted an opportunity to see how they can seek answers to the problem they are sitting with, was suggesting that people should do as they wish. On the contrary, I expect the SG of the ANC as the custodian of the principles, the resolutions, and the principles that underpin how the African National Congress must be run, to be the first one to ensure that we as members, are brought to the level of adhering to the principles of the organization. In actual fact, I simply do not agree with how he's interpreting the entire, including the problem that he's sitting with of him stepping down.
Yeah.
The SG must be an example to the many members of the organization as an engine of this organization.
All right.
If the engine fails, then we'll sit with a problem.
Mr. Ntatisi, yes or no? Should the former president be arrested if he defies going to Zondo tomorrow?
Any member of this country, any citizen who undermines the principles as underpinned by the constitution of this country and undermine resolutions and processes that are established, that is called, and the law must take its course.
Thank you very much.
I wouldn't say anything contrary to that.
Gregory Ntatisi, thank you very much for your time. The Acting Secretary General of Umkhonto we Sizwe National Council.